And welcome everybody. Welcome to this Concise Webinar, Smart E-Commerce Strategies for 2020. My name is Richard Keeves and I'm joined today by Malcolm Bull and Gareth. So welcome to Concise Webinars. There's lots of people here today and not everybody has been to one of our Concise Webinars before. So just a quick run through. These are meant to be 100% educational, concise without waffle, and we do try to keep them pretty tight on timeframes there. Before we begin, this is being recorded. You can submit questions. You can ask them through the chat box. You can ask them as we go along, and we'll also hopefully have time for live Q&A at the end. This is about strategies for e-commerce for 2020, and the good news is the strategies for 2020 are not such a lot different to what you may or may not have been or may have been doing up till now. But what we're focusing on now are some of the things that are really important to be doing. The underlying points about this, the long-term trends that are driving change and driving e-commerce, is the constant need to make things more convenient, the constant need to make things faster for customers and faster for sellers to sell and to deliver, and the need to be always available, to make sure that what you're presenting is available anytime, anyhow, on any device. And the other point there about prices continually drive themselves down or are being driven down. This makes it look like e-commerce is about having the lowest prices to be successful. But that's actually not necessarily the case. The seller with the lowest price doesn't always win. And now why is that? Because there's a heck of a lot more to it than just price. It's about stock availability, the reputation of the seller, your shipping costs, your shipping policies, your return policies, payment options, the growth of Afterpay and Zip Pay and like Zip Money, and these various options that add in payment facilities that people hadn't had available a few years ago, show that payment options and the ability to offer different payment options are really, really important. And these things are often more important than price. So there are lots of things that are more important than price, but when everything's similar, then price is the key determining. What's the most important thing of all, though, really, are relationships and trust. The relationship that you have with your customer, the relationship that your customer has with you, and of course, the level of trust that's in that relationship. So that's really the underpinning. Now I'm going to hand the talking stick over to Gareth, who's going to take us through the next few points.
Thanks, Richard. So one of the things to remember when you're looking at your website and your e-commerce strategies for 2020 or any year in that matter is you can read a lot of things on the internet. There's lots of really useful things that we'll tell you today, but they are all need to be considered in the view of your customer. So it's very important to know yourself really well, and that means who are you as a business, what does your brand stand for, what are your objectives, what are you trying to achieve online. For example, using Afterpay, if you are using Afterpay, you're going to lose between 5 and 6%. So if you're running a low margin business, then perhaps that won't be for you. So while we might say that's a great thing for you to add, you need to consider how that applies to your own business. Remember why you started the business. Why does the business exist? What type of customers are you trying to look for? Where do you fit in? What's your niche? You might look at Google Shopping, for example, and there may only be a certain number of products that you are price competitive for, or have stock for, or have a competitive advantage in. So you don't want to be all things to all people. You also want to know your unique selling points, that's the USPs, and make sure they're really obvious on your website. We often see websites that look exactly the same as everybody else, and so we want to make sure that your unique selling proposition and points of difference and why you do things differently to your competitors, they should be front of mind for your customers when they're looking at your site. You also want to know your products. If you're selling unique products, what are their benefits? I often use the analogy of going into a store and having a little customer service rep come and talk to you and tell you all about how wonderful the product is. You really need to make sure all of that information is covered on your product descriptions. You've got lots of images. There's lots of information about every product so that a consumer can make their decision there and then. You also want to know your customers better. There's a lot of information you can get on customer demographics. You can use Google Analytics to work out what your customers are doing. Who are they? Where are they? What gender? What age? Different colors, different font sizes are going to appeal to different age generations and different genders. For example, if you're primarily targeting a 60+ audience, then you typically want to choose larger fonts and larger buttons, because a lot of them have got their a lot of that demographic have their screen resolutions zoomed in, so you don't want to be using small fonts and so on. So really consider who your ideal customers are. What are their pain points? What are they currently using? Are they looking to buy online, or are they still looking to shop in a bricks and mortar store, and the e-commerce website is to assist in that process, or are you primarily only an e-commerce store? Where do they go online? If you're selling caravans, then no doubt you'll find a lot of your target customers in the travel forums and so on. Get to know what they're looking for, what they like, and make sure your website and all the strategies around that speak to them as a customer. And so also know your competitors. Where do you sit in the market? You know, if you're the most expensive business, or you have the most expensive pricing, then you need to have the best service. If you're the cheapest for a certain price, are you able to deliver on that promise? Are you able, you know, if you've got the fastest shipping, is it the fastest shipping? Really make a list of your key competitors. I often find a table format is a really good way of doing it, to list 3 columns with your primary competitors and make a list of all the things that they're doing really well, and then all the things that they're doing really poorly. So if you identify a common theme between all the competitors, that they're all doing something really, really bad, or not very well, then you could make that your point of difference. You could also join competitors' mailing lists, follow them on social media, keep an eye on their reviews, and really look out for those pain points so that you can maximize your points of difference for your customers. So passing the mic baton back to Richard.
Okay, so the next point really that we've got, the strategy number 4, is to understand your numbers, know your numbers better. This is about how you use analytics, and this is the source of great numbers. It's also about how you understand the numbers happening in your store, that are not just coming from Google Analytics, for example, but understanding the profit margins you've got available in your products. Now, that may be common sense, but part of it's understanding how much money you've got available to spend on customer acquisition before you start making losses on products that you sell. A lot of e-commerce businesses think it's okay to make a small loss in order to win a customer. That may be okay, but in the long term, you can't. It's obviously not sustainable. There's some great stats that have come from a survey that McKinsey did a while back that shows the power of analytics, and the customers or companies that make intensive use of analytics are more likely to be more successful. As we say here, winners know their ratios. Using analytics gives you a chance 3 times more likely to generate above average turnover growth, and 23 times more likely to outperform competitors, 9 times more likely to surpass competitors in customer loyalty. Why is this? Because the companies that focus on and use their analytics actually understand what's going on, and they use those analytics to drive more successful marketing and to drive more successful changes on the website. It's not just about analytics itself, it's about how you use the information and the insights that you get from it. Now, I'm going to hand over to Malcolm, who's going to talk about the next point, mobile.
Okay, point 5. Think mobile first is entitled. Obviously, if you know your customers and you know your clients and you know your analytics, you'll be well aware of what devices are being used to view your site. Whichever device is being used, it's obviously the first interaction with your website. It's what's going to get across your message, your brand, and your interactions. Everybody thinks that the majority of views are on mobile, and in most cases that's correct. A lot of mobile interaction is actually browsing and viewing. And one of the main things is, although nowadays you have to optimize your mobile view because most people are looking at you for the first time on your mobile, it's not necessarily the platform that the user uses to actually make the conversion, the purchase on your website. One of the interesting things on this slide is that the stats that mobile devices generate 61% of the traffic, but actually only 33% of conversions. And this is the case in a lot of situations. People will purchase on either a desktop or a tablet. So both or all interactions are really important in terms of getting across your brand. You have to, at all times, you cannot just rely on what you put there. What we tend to do an awful lot of is actually review and tweak using the analytics to find out how we can improve the actual conversion rate. Also, you do need to make sure that the speed and the usability for the customer is totally optimized to that customer and your customer base. Moving quickly on to the next slide. If I can click on that, there it is. One of the things, just to let you know very quickly, is an example where increasing the mobile experience, look at those figures at the bottom, 81% increase in e-commerce conversions on desktop. That also increased the conversion rate on mobiles by just 36%. So increasing the mobile view will increase your click-through and your conversion where it is actually targeted. Yeah,
just on that, this particular case study is a case study that's on the Concise website. We've got lots of case studies on the website now. But one of the things about this was that the website was redone with a mobile-first mindset. But what happened as a result of focusing on the user experience is not just going mobile, it increased the mobile conversions, but we also got astonishing increase on conversion rates on desktop as well. So mobile first doesn't mean forgetting desktop. It means improving user experience.
Yeah. And moving on. Point 6, the customer experience. Obviously, this is one of the most important things in terms of engaging the customer. It's usability and navigation. A lot of these are very obvious points, but it's always worth stating the obvious. If you can't use it and you can't navigate, you're never going to get to what you're going to buy. The hosting and your speed. A lot of platforms now are self-hosted, so that the speed is not a big issue. One thing to note is a lot of software out there for measuring speed doesn't actually cover all angles, so be very careful what you use and the results you get. Content. Obviously, content needs to be engaging. Make it bite-sized, not rambling. Authentic and consistent. On brand, just get the message across. Useful FAQs. Another way to get content in there and something where the clients will actually search and look for questions on your products. Site search, obviously depending on the number of products, the collections that you're involved in, but site search can be very important on large sites. And improve product information. Again, if you can be concise and use videos for explanations of how to use the product, etc., that will engage. We do use a lot of tools to check out what people do and how they do it. They are all useful tools. They're listed there that will help you improve the overall customer experience on your website. So again, never take it as read once you've finished. Just keep checking, keep looking at the data, and keep tweaking. You can always improve the number of sales that you'll get. Okay, I'll hand back.
Thanks, Malcolm. Okay, so the next strategy is to actively build more trust and proof. This don't just leave it up to chance whether people give you reviews. I mean, obviously it's about they choose whether they're going to give you a good review or not, but it's a way of actively trying to focus on making sure that there is proof both within Google, within Facebook, and on your website that customers like you and trust you. Google reviews are really, really important, but what's also really important is to make sure that you always respond to those reviews and respond nicely to the reviews. Reviews are important. We've actually got some new tools, and we're going to be on review collection and management, and there's going to be a webinar run next year now, but that will focus on some of these new things that we've got available for managing reviews. The next strategy is about improving sales processes. With e-commerce sites, it's once people are on the site, it's then really important that you make sure that you take them through a process, that the process works for them, but it's also got to work for you. So the actions under the strategy of improving sales processes on your website include reviewing the conversion points, the calls to action, and not just doing that on a desktop, but do it on mobile, tablet, and desktop as well. This is about making sure that that conversions are easy. When you go through this, think about it from the perspective of a customer and maybe one who's not familiar with your website. So rather than you do all of these checks, get somebody who's not familiar with your website but who is prepared to tell you the truth to run through and explain what they're thinking as they go through. Check your shipping costs. One of the biggest abandonment points within e-commerce platforms and e-commerce shops is the shipping costs. When someone discovers what the shipping costs are, they can abandon. And so make sure your shipping costs are as good as you can get them, but also make sure that they're as obvious as you can make them so that people can see them right up front. Returns policies. 80% of shoppers are deterred by inconvenient return policies. And if that's the case, make them convenient, make them friendly. Checkout processes. 74% of shoppers will seek out a competitor if the site they're on is too cumbersome. Improve the abandoned cart emails. If you're not using emails to follow up to people who have abandoned your carts, then it's a massive opportunity, and continue to tweak those so that you can improve the responses and the results you get. Don't just sell the products that the customer is wanting. Offer complementary products. And so this is about saying if you can add to the basket, then you can improve the sale, and building that into the sales process can be really important. Buy online, pick up in store. Once you get people into the store, then you can obviously work with them and improve their experience. And there's a growing trend in buying online, pick up in store. There's also a growing trend in research online, purchase offline. It's called ROPO, research online, purchase offline. And so that's where people are doing the research, but they are actually wanting to buy in store. And so there are people who want to buy in store. Allow them to focus on them. The point there about fraudulent credit cards is actually really important. Most people are on top of this, but if a card is going to be fraudulent, you want to know that before you start fulfilling the order. Unpacking the experience. When somebody gets a product delivered to them and they go through the experience of unpacking it, then how can you improve that? That's part of the sales process. It's part of the fulfillment process. There's other things to be thinking about as well in customer service. How can you improve the way you respond? How can you improve the way that you're actively supporting customers to have a better experience by providing them with better, improved responses? One of the examples that we talk a bit about a business that's made a difference and made an impact is Iconic, where Iconic will allow you to, obviously they want you to buy from their shop, from their store, which is a marketplace. It's not just Iconic selling stuff. They allow other sellers to come in and sell through Iconic. But what they offer is 110% credit. If you make a purchase through Iconic and you decide to return the product, you can either get a refund or you can get a credit, and it's not just for your money that you've spent already. They'll give you 110% credit to use next time. That makes a difference, and it makes you reassured that you're not going to be losing money, and in fact, you can actually make money to a certain extent. Obviously, you've got to then spend it and that's good for them too. Strategy number 10, improve how you're using Google. Improve how you're using Google. Get good SEO help. Understand that the My Business listing, Google My Business listing, is actually really important. Check it and make sure that it's as optimized as you can make it. Make sure it's got the information that people are likely to be looking for. Google's answer box, where people type in questions to Google and Google presents answers, try to win that. That's one way of really making sure that of using Google to the max. If you're a local business, Google Maps are really important. That's tied into your Google My Business listing. There's lots of things you can do to optimize your Maps listing. Google Shopping offers opportunities to sell products. It may or may not work for you, but it's certainly working for a lot of businesses. Google Ads it can be made, always tweaked and made more effective. Google advertising is never a set and forget thing. Some people think it is and they just let it roll, whereas if you finely tune and optimize ads on an ongoing basis, you can really make improvements. And part of that goes to quality scores. If you're not sure what quality scores are, we ran a webinar on that a while back, and it's available through our website to understand that quality scores are really important and can make a difference not only to the effectiveness of your ad, but also to the cost of the ad. Google remarketing and Google reviews continue to work. Google sucks enough money and information out of all of us that when you're running a business online, you can make better use of Google if you put your mind to it, and there's lots of ways. Similarly, improve how you're using Facebook. Are you using Facebook? There are lots of ways to improve how you're using Facebook. Facebook advertising is an obvious one, and you don't just have to run the same ads for everybody. Facebook allows you to target different ads to different sorts of users, different ads for customers, different ads for your prospects, different ads to lookalike audiences. And so you can really start getting out there, but with different messages that are targeted to people who may be able to use them. Instagram, obviously a powerful platform. And there's lots of opportunities to how you use that. And Messenger chat. Messenger is really becoming, in our experience, the chat product of choice now. If you've got a website, rather than choosing some of the separate chat systems, a lot of businesses are going for Messenger chat to add because of so many people who are their customers already using Facebook and using Messenger. And so Messenger chat gives you ways of offering sales or making sales, but also customer and service support. There's lots of chat bots for Messenger chat. Be really careful of them. Some of them are better than others, and you can automate some. Chat bots look like they're a handy thing, but you can automate yourself to actually destroying customer relationships with a chat bot that makes you look like somebody who doesn't really care. The next point is moving into the threats and risks. These are things to be careful of. Be careful of the savvy user, the person who actually, customers are clever. Customers know how businesses operate, and they know that if they don't buy on the first email, in a week's time, they may get a voucher that says, here, a coupon that says, here, get 5% discount, 10% discount. Customers are becoming more and more savvy, and so think about how you're using your marketing techniques, but understand they may be working against you just as much as for you. I mentioned before about chatbots. Bad chatbots or things that haven't been planned well can actually really destroy or hurt customer relationships. Marketplaces are a growing area. There's a story just the other day how Bunnings are going to be releasing their new website. They've appeared to be a bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to e-commerce over the last 15 years because they've got a few years ago they had such a terrible inventory management system that they actually couldn't, they didn't know what stock was in their warehouses, so they couldn't let people know about that online. What Bunnings apparently are now going to be releasing in the next few months, maybe next year, I guess, is this is the story, is a marketplace. And so it won't just be Bunnings products that will be available. It may well be millions of other products that are available. And this is similar to how Walmart operate in the United States. They've got a marketplace. Amazon have a marketplace where it's not just Amazon products, it's sellers other sellers who join and sell their products through the marketplace. As an example of a marketplace, Alibaba in China is a massive marketplace for Chinese manufacturers. Be careful of those. You can use marketplaces, never rely on them. There's a point there about customer acquisition costs. One of the things that it's really important to monitor is how much it costs to get a customer. Ideally, you keep the customer acquisition cost less than the marketing allowance that's in the initial sale or the initial purchase of the customer. But there are some businesses that operate with the customer acquisition cost actually greater than the lifetime value of the customer, and that's just a recipe for loss-making disaster. Some other threats and risks. These are relatively minor for most Australian e-commerce merchants, but certainly are impacting some in the US. And some of our clients who are selling big time into the US need to be aware that the US states with sales tax collections are getting very aggressive about collecting sales tax from sellers who are remote, out of the state, out of the country. But if you're selling into the state and selling sufficient volume to trigger the level, then they may come chasing you for sales tax. And this is real. There are stories. PwC have released some information on this just recently. Typically, the thresholds vary with different states, but if you're selling, for example, $100,000 worth of product in a year into a particular state, you may well have trigger the threshold that you need to be collecting sales tax. There's also some triggers based on the number of customers or the number of products that you sell, not just the sales volume. So it's something to check out. Another point that's come up recently is about web accessibility, that there are some e-commerce stores, and again, this is in the US more so than Australia, but some e-commerce stores that are being sued because they're not accessible for people who, for example, may be blind. And so web accessibility is really important. As a general rule, e-commerce sites and every other website should follow the W3C, that's the World Wide Web Consortium's accessibility guidelines. Most websites don't follow that. Most e-commerce stores don't follow that. Most don't even know about it. And even government departments that are kind of relatively legally required to follow these guidelines often don't. And so web accessibility is something that is important, and if in terms of punishments or threats, the fine that was being levied in California to a website just recently was a $4,000 fine for not having their website accessible. It'll probably cost more than that to make it fully accessible, so that's one of the reasons why businesses just put up with it. But really, it's a great thing to make sure your website's accessible to anybody who can come along to it. And there's some stories we can tell you more about that. There are other threats and risks as well. These are threats and risks that are probably more induced by the business as opposed to external threats and risks. There's paralysis by analysis, where you get confused by hesitating too long over decisions, and so you do nothing. That is a threat. Complacency, where you think things are okay and they'll stay okay. That is a threat. So's arrogance, thinking that you're so successful, you'll stay successful. The arrogance of success. And another point there is about spending too much on things that don't work, but also not investing enough on things that does work, or things that do work. And so these are threats and risks both to the business, but also the mindset, how you approach things. And how you approach things next year will be maybe similar to how you approach things this year, but as with everything, the world is speeding up. There are new things coming on stream. That's been a quick run through of the strategies for 2020. The key takeaways: remember who your customer is, remember what devices they may like to use and do like to use, what channels they like to use, and see these strategies that we've gone through the eyes of your customers. Think like a customer, not like the store owner. And if you're not sure how to do that, then talk to people who are your customers. You can never talk to too many customers. You talk to lots of customers and you'll get lots of ideas. And also the point about that, look after your customers well. They'll normally keep coming back, not always, but normally. Never take customers for granted. You just can't afford to do that these days. And And there we go. That's a concise webinar on strategies for 2020. Now we've got some questions. We're very happy to take more questions. The first question is, can you talk? And this I aim this one to Gareth actually. Can you talk more about USPs? How do I find my USP?
Okay, USPs are unique selling points. So I mentioned briefly before about starting off with a bit of a table. So pen and paper, for all us technical people, pen and paper I find is the easiest way to do this. Is draw a nice little box with 3 columns and put yourself in one of the boxes and 2 or 3 others in the other boxes that you think are competitors. You can find those competitors by Googling. You might know them already. So on and so on, and then go through their websites and look for key things like, do they have free shipping? Is it overnight shipping? Is it express shipping? Do they offer Afterpay or Zip Pay or one of those? Do they offer PayPal? Do they offer different pickup in store options? What are their prices like? What are their images like? And do a bit of a score sheet. You know, you can do 1 to 10. Give them a bit of a score, look at a mobile, look at a desktop, and then once you've kind of got an idea of your competitors and what they're doing, you can then give yourself a score in comparison. So you might, for example, have the best shipping of all of them. If you had the best shipping, then you could write a little tagline like Australia's cheapest freight, for example. That's a unique selling point. If you had the best prices, you could write a tagline that said something like, lowest prices are just the beginning, like Bunnings, or which is lies half the time, but they've got enough to be able to prove it when they need to. You might have, say you offer 10 types of payment methods. You could write a unique selling point that said something like 10 ways to check out. So you're trying to find things where you differ. You might be the only people in your country or Australia that have local stock. So someone I was talking to the other day had 4 physical warehouses spread around Australia. They're the only people that have their product in stock, and you can get it the same day. So their unique selling point that they should be leading with, plastered across their website, should be that they are the only people in Australia where you can get it today. If you need it today, we can get it to you today. So yeah, that's a good little exercise to do.
Thanks. Okay, another question. Can you please elaborate on try to win the Google answer box? Is that through markup language? Gareth,
I think that was in response to something you said, Richard. So
okay. All right. Thank you. No,
I can elaborate if needed.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So trying to win the Google answer box, yes, you can, yes, through markup language. Now, markup language, really, rather than calling it that, let's call it schema. And so so Google likes schema, schema. And if you Google or go to schema.org, you will see a whole bunch of different ways of categorizing things. So Google likes things to be categorized, including questions and answers. But Google also likes people to have questions or Google likes to be able to deliver answers when people type in questions. And this kind of also goes to another thing that is a bit of a threat as well that we didn't talk about, and that is called Google Zero Click. And Google wants to be able to deliver things, to deliver information to people without them leaving Google. And so on a search results page, people are within Google, and so if Google can deliver the answers to someone's question on the search results page, then Google has delivered that information without Google having lost that business or lost that user. And so Google likes then to present answers to questions. If you can present your information as questions and answers, and Google can pick it up. If you use schema or markup to specify that, then you've got a better chance of doing it. But you also need to be considered an authority within your area. It needs to be a question that is relevant to what Google's looking at, and Google will apply the same sort of rules that it applies normally, that it won't display rubbish and it won't display things that it thinks are coming from websites or businesses that are not authoritative in a particular topic. So yeah, try to win the Google answer box is a tactic that helps you make better use of Google to get known and ideally clicked on. But remember that within that, it's Google's goal for you not to get clicked on. It wants to deliver the answer on its search results page. It's complicated, but there are ways of winning with Google, and that's one of them. Now someone's answered, isn't the Google Zero approach bad for our SEO? It's not so much bad for the SEO. It's neither good nor bad. Google Zero is about understanding that Google actually really doesn't want people to leave the search results page. But if you present good enough information and present your brand, then at least you may well get known and ideally clicked. It's an ongoing game. Do we have any other questions? Okay, someone said, e-commerce stores being sued in Australia? Not yet, except when you tell lies and say things that are incorrect. There are some good stories coming out about that, and that may be the subject of another webinar we might run next year, possibly in conjunction with a law firm. That's probably about it for this session. Unless anyone's got any other questions that are coming through, please feel free to contact us, but we do try to keep these concise. Let me just quickly mention about upcoming webinars. The next one that is planned is next Thursday week, in fact, on the 5th of December. And this is on ransomware. We've actually got a global security expert who's joining us for that webinar, who used to actually be the chief security architect for Microsoft, and he's written 11 books of thousands of magazine articles. He is a total authority, and he is joining us for that webinar together with Jason Willison, who is the MD of One Technology, a managed IT service provider. That's going to be a really important session for anybody who has people who may introduce ransomware into an organization, and that's really all of us. So that's on 11 o'clock next Thursday the 5th. And we've got some other topics there that you can see on screen that we're working on for next year about Amazon, content marketing, and various other things. So that's a wrap on behalf of Malcolm and Gareth and myself. Thank you very much for participating. We're happy to take any more questions afterwards. Send us an email, call us up. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for attending, and have a great day. Thank you.
Cheers.